All right, and we're back, and I got to jump right into it. The 4K release this week. We only have one new movie this week, but what it is, it's the movie of the summer as far as I'm concerned, and what a terrific movie it is. Might even be the movie of the year for me. Yesterday,
It's an interesting. First of all, most interesting thing about yesterday is the star.
yeah.
What is the Pakistani?
Himesh Patel. He plays Pakistani, but he's Indian.
But he's in play
Yeah.
Indian. Okay,
Yeah.
which might be an issue, but nevertheless,
Yeah.
there he is. What I like about this film is that that's irrelevant.
That's the beautiful thing too.
It-
They didn't cast him
No.
because they were going for for diversity checkbox.
No.
They didn't cast him because they're sort of trying to boost their numbers. They cast him because he's the guy.
He's the right guy. Yeah,
He's the right guy. He's a songwriter and he's a singer and he's funny and he's a comedian and he's deadpan and it's like he's the right guy.
yeah.
That's it. And I love that. And kudos to Danny Boyle, who has always been, a colorblind director that way. And he's going to do whatever's the best film. And to Richard Curtis, who wrote the script, who's like, yeah, I just want the best guy. Bravo to both of them. It's just what a great pairing, Danny Boyle and Richard Curtis.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, if you don't know what this is all about yet, so it's about a guy who's kind of a down and out songwriter trying to have a career, and a kind of an event happens, such as you would get in in those old movies from the '90s, like Big, or what else had those little supernatural events? There were a whole bunch.
Freaky Friday.
Freaky Friday. Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day, where we're going to assume that you're going to accept that something has happened for which there is no logical explanation. Just go with it.
Yeah.
You'll enjoy the rest of the movie because of it. And Groundhog Day is maybe the best example of it. But basically what happens is there's like a momentary global blackout. And when the lights come back on, the Beatles are no longer a part of history.
Yeah.
Like that blackout has erased the Beatles from history, from music, from everyone's memory, except for him.
Yeah.
So now he gets to start performing all these Beatles songs as if they were fresh and build a career off of it. And it's just so charming. It's so sweet. It's so wonderful. It goes in so many directions you don't expect. Has great cameos, great supporting cast. I mean, a really great supporting cast. Kate McKinnon is terrific. Lily James is delightful. Ed Sheeran plays him freaking self.
I
Come
thoroughly
on.
enjoyed this movie, but I do have an issue with it.
Which?
As a sort of music guy. So
Yeah.
the one thing that this film does not consider deeply enough, I think, is what music would be like had there not been
Good
a
point.
Beatles.
That's a good point.
In the world, yeah, the Beatles are gone, yet you do not see what that means to music. Because I can tell you right now, folks, if there are no Beatles,
There's a lot of other stuff that doesn't exist either.
exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of other things are not going to happen, and this movie doesn't quite. It's a little bit more about the relationships and the dynamic, and
That's
whether or not
true.
this is the correct thing for him to do. You know, I'd be screwed if this happened to me. You know why? Can't remember the lyrics to any songs.
Well, I like that they play with that a little bit in the movie too, where he's not quite sure of some of them.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of struggling to remember them, and so they have fun with it.
With the
But-
very title song, "Yesterday."
Yes.
I'm already done. I'm already done.
That's true.
Something about my troubles and being
Far away
and whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it is a delightful movie. I love it. I just love it. I love it so much, and it's original, for crying out loud. It's an original movie.
original. That is a wonderful thing.
And that's meaningful. There's an alternate ending on here, which I'll say nothing about, just other than watch it. It'll be. I'm very curious to see what people think of it. Deleted scenes and some additional songs didn't make the movie, which is fun. Ed Sheeran featurette, Kate McKinnon featurette, a lot of good stuff on here. And here's the great thing: the bonus features are all in 4K.
Oh,
The
fantastic!
movie's in 4K and the bonus stuff is in 4K. So no compromise there. No getting to the bonus features and it doesn't look as good. Nope, it's all 4K, 100%. So bravo to Universal for really kind of going all in on 4K and with the movie and the extras here. It is beautiful. Also, Movies Anywhere. Get that code, add that thing to your Movies Anywhere. Take this movie with you on your phone, on your iPad, wherever you want to go. It is worth it. Absolutely worth it. Also have some anime to kick through this week. Oh, and by the way, Tim, you see what they sent us for yesterday? They sent us a little persuasion. They sent us a little pick.
Oh,
a little
guitar
yesterday
pick.
guitar pick.
I'm claiming
Dude,
that.
Dude, it's yours. Here it is.
I'm claiming that.
There it is.
I'm claiming the guitar pick.
You got it. It's yours.
That's sweet.
So knocked through some anime here. Got some stuff from. Let's start off with from the Right Stuff line, Sunrise. Right Stuff, one of the premier distributors of anime content, and they have the Gundam library. They do all the Gundam stuff. And you want to go to rightstuffanime.com to look to see more about what they've got and what you can get from them. Right Stuff Anime, that's stuff with one F. Don't do Right Stuff, two Fs. Right Stuff, one F, anime.com. And this is Mobile Suit Gundam 0080, War in the Pocket. From the Sunrise line. Wow, is this a totally weird detour on the whole Gundam universe? The only thing I can say about this, without kind of giving it away, is like if somebody were going to do a fusion of the Gundam world with Toy Story, it might kind of look something like this. This takes place in the Universal Century 0079, the year before Gundam 0080, so 0079. And a new Gundam is being built, and so an investigative team is sent to go look into it, and one of whom winds up. Oh, I don't want to give this away. So one of whom winds up through a series of circumstances meeting this kid named Al. And Al is sort of the linchpin for the way that the story transpires after that. And that's where it gets all kind of Toy Story. And it is, it's really interesting. I don't know if I mean, it's really a detour for the Gundam universe. So fans of the Gundam stuff, expect something very, very different this time out. It's really quite unusual. From the Made in Japan line, we also have Joshiraku, which is lovely, if a little bit shallow and not quite as funny as they probably think that it is. It basically centers around 5 women who do this very specific kind of performance art, performance theater in Japan known as raguko, which is like a one person show where you do, it's like a one woman show, basically 5 different women doing one woman shows. It doesn't really blossom as a story the way that I think they imagine it does, but it's still well done, and the voice casting is good, and it's got some moments. So Joshiraku, for those who have an interest in that aspect of Japanese culture, not on Blu-ray but only on DVD, are 6 episodes of FLCL Progressive, which is apparently kind of a big deal, and I'm not familiar with it. It was seen here on Adult Swim originally, and it's all about a 14-year-old girl and her friends, and these 2 kind of alien creatures, and it's, kids becoming more powerful and there's a scooter, and it doesn't really, it's all kind of all over the map. I could see Adult Swim really going for this. The animation's good, and but the whole adventure feels like feels like a Japanese version of Johnny Quest on acid with too many people and too much supernatural stuff. I don't quite understand it. And then we also have a bunch of stuff from Funimation. Actually, before I get to the Funimation, let me knock off this as well. Tada Never Falls in Love, complete collection. This is also from Sente. This is this is so-so. I mean, it's strictly for people who are just really, really dedicated to kind of youth-oriented anime. It's all about a guy who wants to be a famous photographer, and it's it's soap opera. It's like anime soap opera. It deals with a lot of very specific Japanese things that don't really translate very well. However, there's a market for this, and I'm not gonna Not going to denigrate anybody who considers themselves part of that market.
Mm.
All right, here we go. The Funimation stuff, real quickly. Kakurio, Bed and Breakfast for Spirits, Season 1. It's exactly what it is. It's about a bed and breakfast for spirits. It's very much rooted in Japanese polytheistic theology, mythology, whatever you want to call it. And it's a little bit inaccessible, but beautiful, beautiful artwork. Really well conceived. Then we've also got Love Live Sunshine Season 1 and Season 2, the complete series. This is immersed in the whole culture of Japanese pop music competition and teen idols and teen bands and all of that nonsense. And it is more obsessive there than it is here. These kids just want to form their own group, and there it is. You want to go out and form a band? Okay, it's like an anime version of the Archies, I guess. Something. My Hero Academia Season 3 Part 2. It continues the My Hero Academia Odyssey. It is, there's no way that you're going to come to it at this point if you haven't seen the previous stuff. It'll make no sense at all. And then the last three here, Lord of Vermilion, The Crimson King, the complete series, really, really superbly done. Takes place just about a decade or so in the future, and Tokyo has been the victim of this thing called this weird red mist, and this is basically a kaiju story where people are turning into monsters, and now we've got to figure out what's happened, and how do we solve this and deal with it. Kind of a kaiju story meets a zombie story in really, really well animated anime. The Tatami Galaxy, the complete, kind of psychedelic, a little bit visually beautiful, a little bit inaccessible. Kind of deals with the college life and growing up and how you sort of manage all of that. Feels a little bit like That Girl. Done Japanese anime style with a little bit psychedelic animation. And then lastly, the One Piece saga just keeps on going. This is Episode of East Blue, Luffy and his four friends' great adventure. I'm not going to tell you what East Blue is or who Luffy is or anything about his four friends. It's just too much backstory here. But it is very much in keeping with the other One Piece adventures. So fans of One Piece, you will not be disappointed.
Groovy grooves. Knock off a few of these.
Yeah.
Let's see. Kind of classic films, relatively speaking. Nightwish, 1989, Bruce R. Cook film, starring Brian Thompson. I always loved Brian Thompson. X-Files, Cobra,
sure,
all that kind of stuff. This is one of these sort of scary house movies. They go into the scary mansion to the ghost and all kinds of things we're going to have to deal with. But it's like a scary house movie meets Altered States, because they're using this sensory deprivation chamber to take these students, this nutty professor, and drive them into the deepest reaches of their minds. And next thing, they start experiencing their own deaths, and then the deaths actually start happening. One of those kind of things. So, it's not a fantastic movie, but there was a little run there in the middle 80s, early 90s, where these sort of movies, Brainstorm was another one.
Yeah.
Altered States.
Exploring
all of these the scariest thing is inside your own mind kind of movies. Anyway, this is kind of cool. Blu-ray special edition features a commentary with the executive producers and the filmmakers, and it's kind of a neat movie from that period, from that era. I cannot believe that John Carpenter's Vampires was 1998.
I know, isn't it crazy?
Yeah, it's really irritating.
Nuts.
Really, really irritating. As vampire movies go, this was a fairly decent one. Sort of in that period when the vampire movies were coming back again. The Catholic Church is aware that there are vampires, as the Catholic Church always is. It has its vampire hunter team that it sends out with James Wood and Daniel Baldwin. Cheryl Lee is the thing about this movie. Cheryl Lee from Twin Peaks, of course.
Yeah.
Twin Peaks had been about 6 years before.
Backbeat.
And Backbeat. Oh, I forgot about that, yeah.
So good.
She was just simply extraordinary. And this otherwise, more or less throwaway John Carpenter movie. What is neat about it, you got Maximilian Schell, you got Gregory Sierra. This is one of those movies where the old guys are still hanging around playing priests and stuff like that, and I rather enjoyed it. Special features interviews with the director, Carpenter, who's still hanging around with us and doing some stuff, Woods, Ian Thomas Griffith, and a few other folks. Vampires, not a bad vampire movie as vampire movies go. Going way back to 1959, Bucket of Blood. Roger
Love
Corman's
this movie.
film.
We deal with this, by the way, in Schlock,
Yeah.
which you and Ray and I made, all those years ago, and which Ray has remastered for Blu-ray, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yep, we're getting ready to get that out on an anniversary edition. But yeah, Schlock is going to be out again, and Bucket of Blood is a really important Roger Corman. It's kind of autobiographical Roger Corman.
Yeah.
Wanting to be taken seriously as an artist.
As an artist, yeah. Wonderful film. Lost Dick Miller a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Not too terribly long ago. We lost Dick Miller, star of this film.
And we interviewed him for Schlock, too.
We interviewed him for Schlock. Roger, last time Roger directed was back in 1990, the Frankenstein Unbound, or Roger Corman's That's the last time he directed. But Roger did a lot of directing. We think about Roger and his as a producer and all of the filmmakers he gave us, Roger, who came out of that sort of Roger Corman school of filmmaking is what a lot of people called it. But Roger actually knocked out one or two fairly decent films as a director. He did a fairly decent a film with Vincent Price. A couple of those, and this one, Bucket of Blood, which is really, really an extraordinary film that still lasts, sort of touches on that whole sort of beat period, you know, and all that kind of stuff. So it's really kind of cool in that particular sort of way. Written by Charles Griffith. This has all kinds of special features on it that you're going to love. So if you're a Roger Corman completist or you just love Dick Miller or these movies, definitely pick up Bucket of Blood. Fear No Evil, 1981 film. About a high school student who turns out to be, Lucifer, the devil.
Okay, all right.
That happens.
It happens.
This was not particularly good back in 1981. It's probably not particularly good now. It is kind of fun, though. I'll tell you that. New 4K master from the original elements. In the interview with the lead actor and some of the special effects folks, new audio commentary. With the director, I do rather enjoy the practical special effects that movies engaged in back during that period. Lots of stretchy stuff and rubber and foam and the head spinning around on sticks and all kinds of stuff like that. So you can always have some fun with that. Of all of these, though, the one that I'm most interested in is this 9-film collection from the Noir Archive, Volume 3. 9 films from the Noir Archive of Volume 3. From the good folks over at Mill Creek. So this is just fantastic. Some of these are big, some of these are small. All of them are pretty good so far as noirs go. So what do we got? We got Lineup with Eli Wallach. Let's see. I think that's from 1956, if I'm not mistaken. Hell of a film. It was a big screen movie at the time, which is a fairly unusual sort of thing, but that's a hell of a film lineup. We've got The Shadow from 1956, directed by William Asher. Again, a solid movie starring Phil Carey and Betty Garrett and John Barrymore, among others. Then we have got The Long Haul, 1957. Victor Mature, Diana Dors. Wonderful sort of British noir. Then we've got Pickup Alley, 1957. John Gilling directing this, again with Victor Mature, Anita Ekberg, and Trevor Howard out this time for them. The Tijuana Story. This was a wicked cool movie. Leslie Cardos directing, Rodolfo Carfa and James Darren, young James Darren in 1957.
So good looking.
Oh man, forget about it. In the Tijuana Story, She Played with Fire, also 1957. Jack Hawkins and Arlene Dahl in that movie. Christopher Lee, again, new UK noir. The lineup, by the way, that's a Don Siegel film with Eli Wallach. Just really a wonderful. Richard Jekyll was also in that film. Young Richard Jekyll. The Case Against Brooklyn, 1958. Directed by Paul Windicos, with Darren McGavin, the wonderful Darren McGavin and Maggie Hayes in that film. And then you've got The Crimson Kimono. I always love The Crimson Kimono. This is Sam Fuller, of course. And it's just an absolutely fantastic film. Victoria Shaw in that black evening gown with that slit all the way up the leg to like her belly button or whatever.
Totally.
I cannot believe they got away with that in 1959.
I know.
For God's sakes, man. Man on the String, Ernest Borgnine playing a really hard, Andre de Toth directing, Kerwin Matthews playing a grittier role than we got used to seeing Ernest Borgnine. And we think about Ernest Borgnine, we think about Marty, we think about McHale's Navy and all that kind of stuff. Ernest Borgnine with a gun and angry is a hell of a thing to see. It's a bit of a counter spy story there. So those 9 films in this set, the Noir Archive 9-film collection, Volume 3. These are always fantastic and some of my most favorite movies in the world.
Lot of stuff from Kino this week. Really fun stuff from Kino. Let me burn through it. The most important one, I think, overall, is a film that we never saw here, and despite the fact that it had a great star and a great director and a difficult subject matter, that is Pasolini by Abel Ferrara, starring Willem Dafoe. So here's the story here. This was originally made, I think, in around 2014, and it's been on the shelf forever.
Yeah.
And look,
It had a little distribution. I talked about it on the show.
Why would an Abel Ferrara film with Willem Dafoe get cut off at the knees like that? Well, part of it is because I think Pasolini, number one, isn't really known outside of nerdy film circles.
Yeah.
And two, he's a difficult figure. A really difficult
Died
figure.
in a horrible way.
Pasolini, of course, famous for making Salo, first of all, which is a film so vile that people most people who've seen it don't ever want to get near it again. It's sort of intentionally very, very sexually and graphic in so many other ways, but it was
controversial at the time.
Controversial at the time in a big way, trying to Mussolini's fascist Italy and how these kids are abused, and it's really just a rough film to watch. But he also made The Gospel According to St. Matthew, which is his Jesus movie, but his Jesus is a Marxist.
Yeah.
Pasolini was
a difficult political figure. He was not just a filmmaker; he was a writer and
he
a
was
scholar
a writer and a poet.
Poet. Yeah.
And he was a gay man who struggled with his religious and sexual identity. And
a gay man with very right-wing tendencies.
Incredibly so. Very strange figure who wound up dying when he solicited a gigolo and was stabbed to death by said potential partner.
And driven his car run over by his own car.
Yeah. It's pretty...
Middle 70s, I think, right?
75.
Yeah.
November 75. So anyway, this is all about the end of his life, the final hours of Pier Paolo Pasolini. And Abel Ferrara himself, being a very troubled artist, obviously sees a lot of himself in Pasolini. And it is a challenging film. It is a difficult film, but it is a good film. Not a perfect film, but certainly all of these threads come to play in it, and Willem Dafoe acts his heart out. And it's if you are in any way interested in Pasolini, it's worth checking out. As long as we're talking about difficult filmmakers, we also have a pair from Yorgos Lanthimos. The Oscar-nominated Dogtooth, which I hate, and Alps, which I don't like much better. However, I love The Favorite. When you pair Lanthimos with good material, I'm all into it.
Look, I rather enjoyed The Lobster, I think, a bit more than you did.
Yeah. I think you did, yeah. But here's the deal. Dogtooth is about a family. These are, Greek language films. He's still working in Greece, not going outside yet. Dogtooth is about this weird family that's totally cut off from the world and all of their weird rituals and cults and practices to protect their children. It's very unusual, and it gets very deviant and sick at a certain point and doesn't really come to any meaning. However, if you love Lanthimos, it is your piece of cake. Alps is a little bit funnier, a little bit more ironic, a little bit more accessible. Still not enough for me, but again, people love it. Alps is all about people who form a service to impersonate dead people to help their grieving loved ones get through the process. It's a little, again, this also winds up going off the rails at a certain point, which is what he does. Let's do something eccentric, and then let's make it go completely bananas at the end. Very similar films in that respect. That also won an award for a screenplay at the Venice Film Festival. You got some extras on here. There's a commentary on Alps by Amy Simmons, which is quite good. And then there's a commentary on Dogtooth with the actors from the film Angeliki Papoulia and Christos Passalis, which is fine. There's also a conversation between Kent Jones and Yorgos Lanthimos at the Lincoln Center, which is interesting, and some deleted scenes. Moving along, we have 3 Kino classics titles. The first one is Fred Skepsey, the great Australian director, his outstanding breakthrough film, The Chant of Jimmie Blacksmith. Chant of Jimmie Blacksmith is an amazing movie from 1978, right in the pocket of that Australian New Wave moment when all the Australian directors were coming over here, George Miller and Peter Weir and the other George Miller, and there was a whole bunch of them. and Fred Skepsey, Roger Donaldson at the same
Yeah.
time, Smash Palace, right? So this is, and Bruce Beresford, I think, was the first one with
Yeah.
Breaker Morant.
Yeah.
And anyway, Chant of Jimmie Blacksmith was 1978, based on a Thomas Keneally novel, which is all about a sort of looks at what Australian culture, colonial culture, did to the indigenous population, primarily this one indigenous man who's losing his mind. And what that does to him and for him. It is really a powerful film, still very, very powerful, still really well crafted by even present standards. And Fred Skepsey is just a hell of a great director. Jack Thompson co-stars, but it is Tommy Lewis playing Jimmie Blacksmith, who's never really gone on to do anything else. Man, is he just owns this movie. It's a beautiful thing. Also includes a commentary with Fred Skepsey that is a must-listen, absolute must-listen. Other stuff on here, there are some interviews and whatnot, but listen to that commentary. And interesting to compare the two different versions. The international version is 5 minutes shorter than the Australian version. It's not much, but they are different, and both of them are included on this set. From the American Film Theater line, which we continue to talk about, there are two more releases. These, of course, this was the life work of Ely Landau, who wanted to get all these great plays and turn them into movies, and continue to do so with the American Film Theater business model. The two that we have here, Brian Friel's Philadelphia, Here I Come, with Donald McCann and Siobhan McKenna, or Siobhan, however you pronounce it. It's 1971, made in Ireland, and quite well directed. Pretty darn well directed by John Quested, who did a lot of TV at the time as well. And then the other one is, and by the way, that's kind of a minor one. I'm not that familiar with Philadelphia, Here I Come. It's an okay play. It's a pretty good production of it. But the one you really, really want to zero in on is Harold Pinter's The Homecoming. Anything Pinter is great. Interview with Edie Landau on here, a promotional film for the American Film Theater on Ely Landau, and an interview with David Watkin, who, of course, would go on to do Chariots of Fire and many, many, many other fine films. Peter Hall, the great stage director and father of actress Rebecca Hall, directed this and does a great job. Peter Hall has done a handful of films. I like all of them. He doesn't do films often enough. This is in 1973, and what an absolutely wonderful adaptation of a very difficult Pinter play this is. It really is. It's almost Arthur Miller-like in many respects. The way that it kind of immerses itself in all the conflicts of these families, maybe even Chekhov. O'Neill, Chekhov, all those guys. Yeah, for sure. Really, really good. Great cast. Most of them actors that you probably wouldn't be familiar with. Cyril Cusack being the exception, Ian Holm being the other exception. But really, really a fine film. And that is Harold Pinter's The Homecoming for the American Film Theater. And then from the Studio Classics line, a whole ton of stuff. Let's go through it. They just went nuts this week. And the first two have been released before, but they are always fun and always worth checking out. Support your local sheriff and support your local gunfighter with James Garner. Suzanne Plachette in Support Your Local Gunfighter is the reason to see this all by itself. Burt Kennedy directs these beautifully. Lots of fun. James Garner is great. Joan Hackett and Walter Brennan in Support Your Local Sheriff. These are just absolutely classics of their period, late 60s, early 70s. And, come on, go for it. It's great. Our good friend Michael Schlesinger, whom we have interviewed on this show, who is just an absolute scholar. He does two sensational audio commentaries here. Really great stuff. Has details I never knew, and I thought I knew these films inside out. Also get a couple of deleted scenes on Support Your Local Gunfighter. So those are fun. And then we've got Blindfold with Rock Hudson and Claudia Cardinale. So this is from 1966, and I'm just going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say, directed by Philip Dunn, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say, if it's got Rock Hudson and Claudia Cardinale in it, see it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it's about.
Can't go wrong with that.
Cannot go wrong with that. This is a pile of fun. Jack Warden, Guy Stockwell, just a pile of fun. and it's basically a spy thriller, but it's got some funny stuff in it. And that's all. That's all you need to know. It's Rock Hudson and Claudia Cardinale just being charming and wonderful and delightful, and it's just a great 1966 movie. Let's see. Got a couple other things here. Let's go with Reap the Wild Wind. Reap the Wild Wind has kind of lost a little bit of its reputation. This is an early Cecil B. DeMille film from 1942 with a sensational cast, beautifully photographed in color. I mean, amazing color for 1942 especially. And here's your cast: John Wayne, Susan Hayward, Ray Milland, Paulette Goddard, Raymond Massey, Robert Preston. Are you convinced yet?
Yeah.
Come on. Who cares what else is going on? It's an adventure film. It's a swashbuckler set in the 1840s off of Florida, and is the adventure part of it very convincing? No, you can tell they're on a soundstage. Whenever they're on a ship, they're on a soundstage. You just know it's all soundstage work. But so what? It's romantic, and it's got freaking John Wayne and Susan Hayward. Beautiful movie. We also have John Wayne in Rex Beach's The Spoilers, which is also made in 1942, directed by Ray Enright. Not quite as good. This is a kind of a run-of-the-mill Western gold rush story that is distinguished only because of the cast. Marlena Dietrich, Randolph Scott, John Wayne do a good job, but otherwise not terribly remarkable. Let's see. Why don't we... let's do some TV.
Do a little TV?
Yeah, let's do a little TV and break it up so I don't ramble on all these.
Well, I have here the complete series of elementary Sherlock Holmes, sort of take on Sherlock Holmes, starring Johnny Lee Miller and Lucy Liu and Aidan Quinn. This and the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock Holmes with Martin Freeman playing the Doctor sort of run parallel. This started a little bit before that. And I must tell you, of the sort of contemporary adaptations of Sherlock for television anyway, this has been my favorite.
Really?
This series, Elementary, with Johnny Lee Miller, set in New York, of course.
Yeah.
It sort of reconfigures all kinds of things. Sherlock, he's an addict just like Sherlock was. She is his sober living companion, an actual doctor, that a surgeon who has issues in a past in herself, and she is contracted to work with the New York City Police Department. Because she is his sober living companion, he hangs around with her. And, goes ahead and solves some crimes.
There you go.
Because why the hell not? And there's Moriarty and all of that kind of stuff. And it's just a neat show. I think what I like most about it is Lucy Liu as Dr. Watson in this show. It's just a fun sort of take on the Sherlock thing. And the stories are actually pretty good, too. All right. And I go back and forth. I know I've been inconsistent because I always say that my favorite DC is I always say Flash. But I actually kind of think Supergirl.
Yeah. You're more into Supergirl than I am.
I'm nuts about Supergirl, but I'm just nuts about Supergirl.
Yeah.
In general, just Supergirl. Doesn't make any difference where she is, what she's doing. Helen Slater, 1980, whatever, Supergirl, this Supergirl. But this Supergirl is fantastic. I love it. This is the fourth season of Supergirl. All the villains, all the bonus features, all the great stuff. If you're a Supergirl aficionado, as am I, you're going to love
what I do like about the show, so I love her. And I do love the
Benoist.
Yeah, and I love that they introduced John Johns, the Martian Manhunter, as a character, which I think was a really cool move. That was unexpected and super cool. But then there are other things that are like what, like the fact that I looked at Jimmy Olsen and that I didn't go, wait, Jimmy Olsen isn't black. That didn't bother me.
Nope.
It was like, Jimmy Olsen's not a stud. That bothered me.
And he becomes something steel. Anyway, the guy in the iron suit, which I think is a completely original character.
Totally, yeah. So I need
it's a thing to do.
I at least need my Jimmy Olsen to be a little bit of a nerd. He can't be that hot.
But this is the girl power series. I like it a lot. It's a lot of fun. I love it when they do the crossovers.
Yeah, the crossovers are great.
And occasionally this next one, the complete fourth season, DC's Legends of Tomorrow, which has just been a mess since they launched it. It's just been a mess. Characters have come and gone. They finally sort of worked it out to a thing that makes some sort of sense by the time we get to the fourth season. You still got Rory and a few of the characters. Constantine for some reason, is in the 4th season of this.
I don't.
I
Yeah,
don't.
I know.
I don't. I'm like, how do we get to Constantine?
I don't know.
It's almost as nutty as them. Who's the guy whose head turns into the flaming skull?
Yeah,
that guy
that
is on.
guy.
That guy is on Marvel's Agents of Shield.
Yeah.
I'm like, how the hell? What the hell is this guy doing?
I don't know.
In the show, but hey, it's part of the franchise, so they do it. All new bonus features, including a great gag will and some other stuff. So I don't know, not at the top of my list of those shows, but Supergirl certainly is. Where are we going?
Let me hit a few more of these Kinos here. So we also have another Marlena Dietrich, John Wayne movie. Marlena Dietrich, John Wayne, and Randolph Scott. This is not a Western, however. This one is called Pittsburgh. And it's okay. It's kind of middling. It doesn't really show off anybody terribly well, but it's a story. It's kind of one of the. It's made in 1942, so it kind of comes out of the Depression and World War II, and it's very much a war era movie. It's about friends and rags to riches, and there's a little patriotic thread to it as well. And really, the kind of distinguishing characteristic here is that it's particularly well shot. It's based on a story written by George Owen and Tom Reed, who were really workmanlike writers at the time. And so it's pretty generic, but it is actually really, really very nicely shot. Other Studio Classic films that we've got are Mirage with Gregory Peck and Diane Baker, which was directed by Eddie Dimitrich, used to teach at USC, testified to the House Un-American Activities Committee, and kind of named names, and Eddie was not appreciated for that. He has justified it, though, and whether or not you agree with his justification, he remains one hell of a noir director, and directed some great, great movies. Walter Matthau has a great performance in this as well, but really it's Gregory Peck who just owns this movie. So Mirage is a really interesting, almost Hitchcockian thriller with Gregory Peck as a Hitchcockian figure, just a mild-mannered accountant who is drawn into a web of intrigue when he suffers from amnesia and hires Walter Matthau to be the gumshoe who kind of figures out what's troubling him, where are these flashbacks coming from, and what's all this stuff that keeps haunting me. Really super smart screenplay by Peter Stone, who wrote Charade. That's why it has that Hitchcockian feel to it.
Yeah.
It's a sharp little movie. Commentary by film historians Howard Berger, Steve Mitchell, and Nathaniel Thompson, and Diane Baker gets an interview in here, which is nice. More recent films include The War at Home and The Good Mother. Martin Sheen, Kathy Bates, and Emilio Estevez in The War at Home, which was directed by Emilio Estevez.
I did the junket for that film.
It's an okay movie.
Yeah.
All
a little late for those sort of
Vietnam things.
Retro,
yeah. I mean, it would have been better in like 15 years earlier in '81.
When they were doing Platoon and
all that
Hilton
stuff
and Full Metal Jacket,
Yeah.
and all that was happening.
But as a way of looking at a guy who comes back from Vietnam and has all these troubles readjusting, it's got some moments, got some strong moments. Kimberly Williams is particularly good in it as well.
Yeah.
The Good Mother was directed by Leonard Nimoy. Believe it or not, after he had sort of forged a career with 3 Men and a Baby, that hey, I can direct. I can do things other than Star Trek, and it's quite an affecting film. Has beautiful performances by Liam Neeson and Diane Keaton in it. Jason Robards is fabulous as always in a supporting performance, and it's really just it's just one of those slice of life family movies. It's she's recently divorced and has a child and trying to put her life back together again, and then it starts to come together, and then things take a turn for the worse again. This was produced, I should point out, by Arnie Glimcher, who briefly did have a career as a director when he did The Mambo Kings, and then did a documentary, and he hasn't done anything since. I don't know why. Mambo Kings
Asante and young
Antonio Banderas.
Yeah, young Antonio Banderas.
Mambo Kings is a great movie. He should have directed more. And then the last 3 here from Kino, I am so elated by. This is just absolutely such a delight. 3 of the all-time greatest Ealing comedies, starting with Kind Hearts and Coronets, which has been out in a Criterion edition before. It's now out on Blu-ray from Kino with a lot of great extras on it, including a commentary by Kat Ellinger and an introduction by John Landis. Also features an interview with the late cinematographer Doug Slocum, who many people might know did also shot all of the original Indiana Jones movies, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom. What a joy. This is one of the all-time great British movies. It's really a total joy. Alec Guinness in one of his best performances as well. This is the film that kind of shot him to stardom because he plays 8 different characters. Made in 1949. And it's all about a guy who's trying to avenge the fact that his mom was disinherited. And so he's trying to get himself a title. It is just terrific. Every one of the relatives that he has to deal with also played by Guinness. It's great. It's really, really fun. And then another great Alec Guinness performance in The Man in the White Suit. Directed by Alexander McKendrick, considered one of the all-time great genre films. And it is a genre film. It's kind of a mad scientist film at the same time. He's a chemist, and he creates a fiber that is like it's like superhero fiber.
Yeah, it won't get dirty.
It won't get dirty.
The whole thing, yeah.
It's fantastic, and now everybody wants him. It's great. It's really, really fun.
Talk about high concept. This is 1951.
I know. It's the nuclear era, and we're kind of it's as a metaphor for nuclear power in some sense as well. Really, really terrific. Oscar nominated for its terrific screenplay, wonderfully directed by Alexander McKendrick, and who did a lot of other great movies like the original Lady Killers and Sweet Smell of Success as well. Mm-hmm. And Doug Slocum shot that one too. And then the last one might be my favorite of them all, The Lavender Hill Mob, with Alec Guinness and the great Stanley Holloway from My Fair Lady. This is directed by Charles Crichton, who most famously would just keep directing until he did Fish Called Wanda, which was like a crowning achievement. Charles Crichton has the best sense of timing of any comic director in history, other than possibly Billy Wilder and Woody Allen. Really, really wonderful stuff. Such a fun and funny movie. Alec Guinness was Oscar nominated for this. This was also made in 1951. Can you believe it? All these great performances in 1951. And they're trying to they have a plan to steal this gold bullion from the bank from his own bank. Alec Guinness wants to. He's a bank clerk, and he wants to rob his own bank. So how are you going to do it? And the way that they have concocted it, I will tell you nothing of the plan, but it's so funny and so weird and so hilarious. And Holloway, if you've never seen him in anything else, is such a good actor and so fun. It's a great pairing. The Lavender Hill Mob, one of the all-time great caper movies of all time. Yes,
fantastic stuff. A little bit more TV.
Yeah, do some more TV.
If you look when this show first appeared, I was like, well, that's not going to work, and I was wrong because now I'm looking at the complete second season of Young Sheldon. Picking up where the Big Bang Theory left off, or actually, I suppose you could say preceding the Big Bang Theory, we watched the life and times of young Sheldon from 1989 until he will ultimately become older Sheldon, who we know from the Big Bang Theory. The bright thing that they do with this series is that they have Jim Parsons, Sheldon, narrating. Jim is making more money than everybody in this show.
Yeah.
Just narrating.
Yeah.
He probably comes in once a week and does 4 or 5 episodes a week. Just the narration. It's not that much of the show, but because of his position, I guarantee he's making more money.
Oh, for sure.
Than everybody on this show.
Yeah. Just
doing the narration. Anyway, second season, Young Sheldon. Folks love the Big Bang Theory. I'll be honest, never got into it. Madam Secretary, 5th season again. 5th season of Madam Secretary. I watched the show. I can see the expression on your face.
Yeah.
The same expression is on my face because
How do you get 5 years out of that?
You got 5 years out of this. Yeah, and of course, we had that moment when we.
Real secretaries don't want to stick around that long.
Yeah, she'd be president. But anyway, Stephen King's The Stand. Well, this version of The Stand is the one that Stephen King prefers. I don't. But whatever, it's fine. It too, the second It adaptation of Stephen came out a few weeks before this airing.
Yeah,
did not do as well as that original It.
True.
You were
for all kinds of reasons.
You were on the show for that.
Yeah,
and talked about it and talked about how the children not the same with the children.
True.
The Stand. I can remember when The Stand came out as a novel, crazy long novel, more than 1,000 pages. My wife read it. She read all Stephen King's everything, hardbacks. I used to buy her all the hardbacks. She read this 1,000+ page book. You got to read it. You got to read it. You got to read it. Fine. I read the 1,000 pages over the course of a summer.
Yeah.
Fine. You know,
Yeah.
you get to the last page. The thing that happens, I wanted to kill myself. It's the worst ending of any book I've ever seen. I've ever read, particularly after it made you go through 1,000 pages.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the television version of The Stand. The Good Fight season 3. 10 episodes, so some deleted scenes and a whole lot. Look, the Good Fight, fairly interesting. I have an issue with this show because our good friend Sherman Augustus was up for this Delroy Lindo part.
Yeah.
But Delroy got it. So, anyway, Christine Baranski in this. But a fine series. Never cared for Billions. This is Billions, season 4.
It's cat and mouse every season. It's the same story.
And there aren't any likable characters in the entire series. The two leads, I can't stand either one of those assholes. and I root for them all to lose.
Yeah.
When did we stop having characters that we could root for?
Like Magnum.
Thank you. Thank you. A good guy. He's a good guy. No good guys in that show at all.
Everybody's dark.
The two big family shows, Modern Family, the complete 10th season. Wow. Again, Modern Family is a show that I appreciated more than I actually watched. I watched it early on because I was nuts about Homie from Married with Children. And I kind of got the gist of it and just sort of faded away. But, folks love Modern Family. This is the final season, the complete 10th season and final season. No, I'm sorry. The final season is on right now. This is not the final season.
That's just the 10th.
This is the
11th
10th.
is
the 11th is the final, and that's airing right now. This Is Us has somehow gotten itself to a third season. I don't know why I say this. Everybody on this show gets nominated for Emmys like every 5 seconds, but you know what? Watched the pilot episode 3 seasons ago.
Yeah.
Wanted to kill myself.
Really?
Wanted to kill myself. I hated this show so deeply. It was so earnest and completely sincere. You had to want to kill yourself. So there I go, and I'm just a guy who was complaining about there not being any heroes.
You know what? I defend Dan Fogelman, though, who created the show, because he was so panned last year for Life Itself, which I loved, which everyone else thought was one of the worst films of the year. It made my top 10.
I thought,
it's a good film, and he's really unfairly maligned, because keep in mind, this is a guy who started doing a lot of animated stuff, Cars, and all those Pixar things. That's what he was. His bread and butter was scripting those animated movies, just cookie cutter stuff for Disney Pixar, and he reinvented himself as this kind of 30-something guy.
The narrative, dramatic. 30
multiple characters,
and Herskovitz, all that kind of stuff. Interesting thing. Robin Williams, comic genius. This is just a fantastic. This is all 5 of his HBO specials gathered together in a 5 DVD set, covering 40 years of Robin Williams HBO performances. Look, one of the I can't think of much that makes me sadder than what went down with Robin Williams.
Yeah.
But he has left us really some stuff to love. And this is really great stuff, including some rare archival footage never before seen, appearances at the People's Choice Awards, and all kinds of stuff like that. So, Robin Williams, comic genius. All 5 of his HBO specials.
Awesome. I got a bunch from Arrow and Criterion. Boy, what a bunch we have. So from Arrow first, we have Arrow Academy, but I'm going to go with the regular genre Arrow stuff first. The first one is a movie I'd never even heard of before. In the Aftermath. You ever heard of this, Tim?
No.
In the Aftermath? Crazy. I'm like, what warrants this getting attention? I'll tell you what. It's very interesting. So Cal Colpert is another one of these guys who cut his teeth doing Roger Corman movies, just like Joe Dante and Francis Coppola and Robert Towne and Cameron. All these guys, they all came out of the Jonathan Demme. They all came out of the Corman school. So Cal Colpert is one of those guys, and he made this movie, which is kind of a weird. It's like this bizarre genre mashup, which includes anime pieces from Mamoru Oshii's 1985 anime Angel's Egg, which gets cut into this live-action stuff, which is basically a post-apocalyptic movie about 2 soldiers looking to survive after the world has been completely destroyed. and it winds up taking a very strange sort of poetic, existential, metaphysical turn, and you just don't know where it goes after that. And wow, is it just an unbelievably weird, curious, strange mashup of styles and ideas and all this stuff. Very short, 72 minutes, but really worth looking at if you are a fan of the genre. Really an unusual movie. A super special edition of The Hills Have Eyes, Part 2. Part 2. Oh, it's really tiny. They say Part 2 because
they could have called it The Hills Still Have Eyes.
They could have, but they called it The Hills Have Eyes Part 2. And Wes Craven came back to do this completely unnecessary sequel, but it's weird because it's got a whole motocross thing to it now. Like, it's now a motocross team who run across the cannibals. And, I guess motocross was a thing at this time, like just, I guess it's 1984 that he made this. But I don't know. It's not that it didn't need a sequel. You don't really need this movie. Michael Berryman comes back, and this making of documentary here and interviews with everybody, but tons of extras. I just don't know that this movie was really all that necessary, to be honest. It's not terrible. It's still a Wes Craven film, but whatever. The Prey got another one of those great taglines. It's not human, and it's got an axe. What does that mean? It's not human and it's got an axe. Like it's what, a mouse, a chimpanzee, what
with an axe?
All kinds of things that aren't human. You could put an axe in their hands. They're not very scary. It's not human. It's got an axe. It's the opossum with an axe. Anyway, The Prey is a gore film, and it was when first released, it was a bit of a thing, 1980. And it really isn't really anymore. There are two different cuts on here, the international cut and the U.S. theatrical cut. Neither one is all that better than the other, kind of the same. Interviews galore, all this kind of stuff. But really, when it comes down to it, it's pretty much another one of those slasher movies. Just another slasher movie. Kind of treads a little bit on Friday the 13th, a little bit on Halloween, a little bit with It's Alive. It's all that stuff kind of thrown together, and people go in the woods and they get sliced and diced by some horrible thing with a backstory. There it is. Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2, the Clive Barker films, also out from Arrow with loads and loads of extras, terrific transfers, brand new 2K restorations. Overseen by the cinematographer, Robin Vigian. And, featurettes and interviews and all that kind of good stuff here. But ultimately, unless you're a real big fan of Pinhead, it's not going to go very far with you. It's all that real kind of S&M bondage imagery and symbolism, and Clive Barker loads it up. And, Mm-hmm. A good point. Important to point out as well, Clive Barker did not direct the second one. Tony Randall, not the TV star, the Tony Randall, who spells it with one L, directed the sequel, but Clive Barker produced, and it's basically the same kind of deal. The Arrow Academy title is a joy. It is The Major and the Minor, which is such an absolutely beautiful movie. Directed by Billy Wilder, co-written by Billy Wilder and Charles Brackett, and with a dream cast, even for a Billy Wilder movie. Rita Johnson, Robert Benchley, Diana Lynn, and starring Ginger Rogers and Ray Milland, eventual Oscar winners both. Yeah. Really terrific. Ginger Rogers and Ray Milland, absolutely delightful. Ginger Rogers is at this point was kind of pushing away from the musicals and going more into doing dramatic work to prove that she could do more than just sing and dance and be kind of plugged into as Fred Astaire's partner, and boy, does she just nail it. It's really very. This is almost in the Me Too era, not very appropriate, but because Ginger Rogers is pretending to be 12 years old, and it's a little bit of a stretch, but not too much of a stretch. In any case, it's kind of a thriller. It's kind of a romantic comedy. It's very, very clever. It's really wonderful, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Criterion gives us a couple of great ones this week, too. Old and somewhat new. Local Hero is the more recent film. Local Hero is has continued to be a cult classic since 1983 when it first came out. Bill Forsyth really put himself on the map with this as a director of kind of humanistic comedies. And it's really an unusual story that you wouldn't normally think would make a great movie. Peter Riegert playing a guy from a Texas oil company who goes to Scotland to basically develop the oil off the coast there, and winds up just being completely sucked in by the community and the people and the charm and the pastoral peculiarity of it all. It's just it's really, really very clever. Has an old screwball comedy feel to it, and Riegert is just totally wonderful, and Bill Forsyth nails it. And then lastly, Criterion continues to release all of the old Charlie Chaplin movies from 1928, Chaplin's legendary The Circus. I just wish they'd get all these Chaplin films out sooner rather than later. What a tremendous movie this is. Originally made in 1928, re-released in 1969 with a new score, and just loaded up with wonderful, wonderful extras in here. Chaplin dealing with the circus is kind of everyone's dream come true. The only thing that might be better was if Keaton ever dealt with the circus. But Chaplin finds more pathos in it than Keaton probably would. And it's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. New commentary with Jeffrey Vance, who is Chaplin's biographer. An interview with Chaplin from 1969 when he'd written the new score. And a new interview with his son Eugene Chaplin, plus a whole bunch of other great stuff. Fantastic transfer, gorgeous, never better. This is now the definitive 4K digital restoration version of Charles Chaplin's The Circus.
A couple more television bits over here, including Holocaust, 1978 television miniseries that gave us a very young Meryl Streep and James Woods, Michael Moriarty. Basically, this was Schindler's List 20 years before Schindler's List.
I remember this. It was devastating. It was a television event.
Yeah, exactly. It was one of those television events. It basically follows the story of two fictional families, one Jewish, one German, the Huises and the Dorfs, as the events of the Holocaust sort of play out over a number of years.
Yep.
In several episodes of this series, nominated won 8 Emmy Awards, including Best Limited Series and a Golden Globe. And again, the work of a young Meryl Streep and young James Woods. You just really can't go wrong. I wish there were more on here, but it really was one of the most powerful movies outside of Shoah or something like that of that period. The Truth Will Out is a television series that's actually quite striking. British series out of the UK about a little town in the north of Wales, where there have been these murders, and this retired or a guy who wasn't working anymore, a cop, is brought back to build a team of folks to go out and solve these unsolved cold cases.
Oh, nice.
Gets a couple of these cops. They don't like each other, and this woman who's not even a cop, and he has to go out and solve these crimes, particularly this one crime that happened some years ago. And it turns out the person who was caught and convicted for it and has been in prison for some time for that crime likely did not commit that crime. And so this is going to be a political problem as well as other things. Pretty good show. This is from the producers of the folks who did the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movies. And then we have a little series called Pitching In, a perfectly lovely little series. This one is actually the one that's set on the north coast of Wales. It's about an old guy who has this trailer court with all of these people in this really bucolic setting. His wife passes away. He decides he's going to sell the trailer court. Probably means that all of these people are going to get evicted. His daughter comes home, who's been away for a long, long time, and tries to talk him out of selling the trailer court and evicting all of these people. It's a perfectly lovely and sweet little series.
Terrific. All right, that's it for this week, everybody. We'll see you next week. Have a great week.